Hello and welcome to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efraim Martinez. I am a principal in search of wisdom who have found productivity to be a great tool for success. Today, I have the honor to interview Dr. Courtney Orzel. She is the mom of the two most amazing human beings. She's the Associate Director of Professional Development for the Illinois Association of School Administrators, a superintendent for a long time. I met her for the first time in a conference where she was teaching about what do you need to know to be a superintendent. And that goes with my show. What do you need to know to be an educator that can redefine the education system during this post-pandemic time? Courtney Orzel, who are you?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And just so everyone knows, I didn't realize that this was going to be on video as
It's
well.
true.
So
It's true.
we had a whole back and forth about that. And I'm just excited to be here. So, who am I? I'm a mom. You mentioned that right out of the gate. Thank you. I'm a daughter.
Most
I'm a
important.
friend. I'm a counselor. A lot, I think. I'm a cheerleader for public education. I would say the real me is probably just a girl trying to make things happen on any given day and trying to stay above my head above the water and make a difference. So that's in a
Yeah.
nutshell who I am.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let me tell you, members of the audience, get ready because it's coming. Okay. Let's start with the first question of the show is if if you can walk us through your professional trajectory up to this point.
Sure. So you mentioned I'm currently the Associate Director of Professional Development for IASA, which is our Superintendent's Association in Illinois. I've been doing that for almost 2 years now. And you also shared I'm a former superintendent. I was Superintendent Lamont 113A for 6 or 7 years. Excellent district and opportunity. I'm a recovering middle school principal, assistant principal, dean, athletic director. I remember when they made me an athletic director and I was like, I'm the least athletic person on the planet. They're like, we just need a good organizer. So that was a great opportunity. But I really began my career as an ELA teacher at the middle school and then moved from the middle school to the high school where I was the drama director for a very large high school in the suburbs. And I had zero experience. And I'll never forget Dr. Linda Yonke, when she interviewed me and hired me, said, you can do it. And I said, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'm qualified. And she said, I believe in you. And she took a chance on me like so many other people. And really at IASA, I have the opportunity to work with awesome educators all over the state and the country. So I've been very blessed in my professional career. It hasn't necessarily been easy, but it's landed me in really great places with great people.
For sure. Wow, that's a lot there to unpack. We just had a play in my school. Which
Oh,
one is the play that you remember the most that you had with your students and why?
oh, I love that. So I think my first show was Our Town, and I had no experience, but here's the best part. We had great students at the high school level that knew what they were doing. And they were like, Miss Webb, we're going to help you. I said, oh, please. So they really did so much of that work. But I would say Our Town, I think that was my very first show. And then when I was leaving to go be an assistant principal, they gave me this huge, not banner, but like a framed piece of that with all of the different shows that we had done, and I still have that hanging in my office. But and like 2 of those or 3 of those kids went on to Broadway and do things in New York. When I say talent, that school pushed out a huge amount of talent. It was awesome.
And the play was again?
Our Town.
Our Town. Okay,
Our
I
Town.
need to research that one.
That
Our
was a really
Town.
long time ago. So just so you know, that
Wow.
took me way back because, like you said, I'm old. It took me way back. We're talking 25 years ago.
So, one more question about what you said. which one would you say, or what experience was your best principal experience? Like the one moment that if you had to pinpoint the one thing you're gonna talk first, what was that? Was it a conversation with a child? Was it a graduation? What comes to mind?
So many things come to mind, but I'll never forget a student that walked in my office when I was a principal telling me about experiences that he was having in the building with racism, and just really shared so many powerful and sad and important things that led us as a staff to have some really great conversations and make some significant changes. And that was a lot of years ago, but I'll never forget that moment. There's also moments when I was a building principal that I think back and I think I wish I would have done something better or different or handled things. But one of the things that I'm most proud of is that now I see students who I had when I was a building principal, like Demi Pagic is a teacher in Orland Park, and she started following me on Twitter, and I'm like, is this who I think it is? She's like, you were my principal. And she, just watching her career unfold has really been amazing. She's in District 230 in the suburbs. And so I don't know. I loved being a building principal. I loved it. I've loved all the jobs that I have, but I think being a building principal is a great job.
I have to respond that it says a lot about your character when you said that what marked you was what the student told you and how that allowed the whole staff or community or your team to work together towards something, because that is so important for principals and leaders, that it's not about you as the leader, it's as the whole school as a team.
Yeah. And recognizing individual kids' voices. Like, I'm just really grateful that he felt comfortable enough to come in and sit down in my office and tell me everything that he told me that day, because it did. It made a significant difference.
Badge of honor. Oof. I hope the listeners of the show are enjoying this one. I have a 20-second ad from the Teach Better community. We'll be right back.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
So, Courtney, one of my favorite movies is Back to the Future. It's so significant. So, if like in Back to the Future, you could go in time to any of the positions you have held, what is one or two things you will tell yourself?
I thought about this. I would say one of the things I would say would be, don't let anyone tell you or define your path for you. There were quite a few times I would hear things like, are you sure you're ready for that position? Or you should go to central office before you try to get a superintendent job. But instead, I listened to people who were encouraging me and supporting me to go for it versus people who were telling me that I wasn't necessarily ready for whatever reason. And it makes me always think, is anyone really ready for the next step? I mean, how do we define that? And I just think that people should go for it. So I tell my old self getting into this work when I was a teacher, if I could go back, I would have done a lot of things differently, because that was many, many, many years ago. But I taught middle school and high school. Mm-hmm. And if I could go back, I would have called every parent the first 2 weeks of school, even seniors in high school. And I simply would have said, hey, I'm Miss Webb, or I think I was not married at that point. I'm Miss Webb, and I'm your child's teacher. And if you need anything this year, you can contact me. And what is one or two things that you really want me to know about your child? And I wish I would have done that, because I'm telling you, even parents of seniors in high school want that type of connection. And I feel like I would have learned more, because I hear, and as I experienced it as a teacher in middle school and high school, sometimes kids don't feel like they can talk, or they're more reserved. And I wish I just would have picked up the phone and called, not emailed, not texted. I don't think we had text back then, but I would have picked up the phone and I would have called and I would have made that time. If I could go back, I would have done it. I would have made 150 calls.
Wow.
And now in the work that I do, because I have the opportunity to work with a lot of educators, I do talk about that.
Wow. Listeners of the show, what a great, I never thought about, well, first of all, like when you say, don't let anyone define your path for you, that's an empowering advice. Thank you, Courtney. Like, like children need to hear this, us adults too, right? The world is always, we think the world is telling us to stop, but sometimes it's us stopping ourselves. I love that. And this thing of calling every child, I'm pretty sure that's something I'm going to adapt, because I felt this year, even though the pandemic is ending and now we are looking at each other more, that we still so disconnected, and that will make a huge, that amount of time invested will make a huge impact for the entire year.
Yeah, I think so too. I also say if I could go back to be a superintendent, I would have carved out time for teachers to do that. I would have just done it. Like, here's your space to be able to go and call, and we would have talked. I mean, because I'll have teachers be pretty honest and say, I either don't have the time or I don't really know what to say.
Yes.
And I think that it's something that's a great opportunity that's in front of us that's really simple, and it would benefit everyone, most importantly, kids.
Wow. My wife is a teacher. She will love you too. The next question, very important, about reading or listening to books. It is such a privilege. It's like going to a theme park. What is one fiction book that you cherish the most, and why?
This is going to sound weird, because I mean, as an English teacher at the high school level, I taught a lot of great books, and at the middle school too, like To Kill a Mockingbird, Great Gatsby, Fahrenheit 451, you name it. We were teaching really great texts, but one that stands out to me is Harry Potter, the very first Harry Potter. And here's why. I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to, because it's you and we're having a good time tonight, right? So here's what I'm going to tell you. You know how, so back in the day, I started teaching a long, long time ago, and you could bring in different text materials. You didn't have to go through all of the process that we have now. So I remember when Harry Potter came out, I was teaching 7th grade English, and the kids were kind of a buzz, like, what's going on with this book? And I said, what if we spend 10 to 15 minutes every day and we just start reading it? So we did. And the kids loved it. It generated so much liveliness and entertainment. And look at what ended up happening with the Harry Potter series. I mean, this was book 1, which could have been an epic fail or a wild success. And we saw what ended up happening. So, you know, they were so into it. This would have been 20 plus years ago. And what's super cool is that now my 8-year-old daughter is reading the books and watching the movies. I had never watched any of the movies. So when I was thinking about that, I'm like, I don't know. Harry Potter just kind of stands out to me, because back then you didn't have to go through some big curriculum review process everywhere. And I just brought this book in and unleashed it in the classroom, and it was really awesome. I remember how excited kids were to just be a part of any of those discussions. They loved it.
And in Harry Potter, you had the hero's trajectory. You can talk about all the values and characters that can be applied to any of the standards. Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you for taking that risk before nobody knew about how Harry Potter was going to be. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's right.
So the same question, and the book question is so important that we don't have time to talk about it when we meet in conference and stuff like that. What is the one fiction book that you cherish the most, and why?
NonFiction?
Yes.
NonFiction. So this is the book. I think everyone should read this book. The book is called Courageous Leadership by Carolyn Shields. She was my dissertation advisor at the University of Illinois. If you are doing any type of work with equity, diversity, inclusion, inclusivity, dialogue, you should read this book. She's incredible. And I have not connected with her in a few years, but when I was getting my doctorate, I remember reading that book, and it opened my mind to so many things in our schools, and she's just amazing. So that's a great text that I think every educator should read.
Courageous leadership. Thank you
Courageous.
so much.
Mhm.
Okay. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. How are
Fantastic.
you feeling?
I'm learning so much. I'm here trying to take notes and observe you because you infuse so much intellect. So like I'm trying to really capture everything that you're saying. So the broad question, who do you learn from?
I learn from everybody. I think we're in the state of learning right now. And so I learn from people that I work with, people that I work for. I learned from Twitter. I know you're a heavy hitter on Twitter. And I learned from so many people there. I learned from other educators. I learned from my own kids because I ask them questions and they tell me things. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Absolutely.
So experiences, I don't know. I feel like we have to constantly be learning every day. I feel like I learn multiple things new every single day.
Okay. So connected to that then, who is or who are your biggest influences?
My mom and dad. My dad recently passed away, and that's been a really um, bad experience. But when I look back, I think of all the things that he taught me and how much of an influence that he is on me. My mom is still the same. I talked about my children. Brent Clark at IASA is a big influence on me. Margaret Longo, my former superintendent, big influence to this day on me. Sue Holmes, rock star at IPA, she is a big influence on me. Teachers everywhere, the ones I worked with in Lamont, they were a big influence. Those administrators too. And people say that you are most influenced by the people that you surround, like the 4 to 5 people that you surround yourself with the most. So if that's the case, outside of those people I mentioned, that would be Bhavna Sharma Lewis in Diamond Lake. It would be
Yeah.
Kate Coach. It
Rockstar.
would be Sonia Whitaker, Donna Leak, and really all the other leaders across the state that I have the opportunity to work with. What's cool about my job is that I get to work with a lot of different people all of the time. And it has opened my eyes up to be so really influenced by all of the awesomeness happening across the state in school districts. It's great.
Absolutely.
You're
Now,
influencing me right now.
oh, thank you, thank you. I take it. Okay. Let me ask you. Traveling throughout the state and interacting with so many leaders, is there one or two things that come to mind that are like lessons learned that you at that point when you start you didn't know and now you have more awareness of what is happening in the state?
Yes. Much of the work that I do is about people bringing me in to talk about how hard it is to be an educator. And I teach every day now. So I teach adults, but I teach every day. And then I plan every night. And then I go back and I do the same thing. And so one of the things I think we've learned and what we continue to learn is that people need a great deal of therapy to be able to remember why they became an educator, to be able to say, yes, it's hard. And yes, this is challenging. But I have the opportunity to remind people, you matter. You make a difference. You're making a difference in my kid's life. You're making a difference across the state. You're making a difference to individual kids and families. That to me is powerful. And so I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different, in fact, last year alone, over 5,000 educators. And that has been a privilege to do that. But I think one of the greatest lessons learned is that the work is really hard and we have to support each other.
Yes.
We have to work from the assumption of good. We have to acknowledge that the work is very difficult and we've got to keep going because kids are depending on us every single day. And we should depend on each other
Yes.
as educators.
Absolutely.
We need each other. That's some of my greatest lessons learned already.
Thank you for sharing that, Courtney. I told you that it takes me a while to process everything that you're saying. You're so smart. You
Don't ever
mentioned
call me that. I'll take it. Thank you.
you implied that at some point there were some figures around you who said that before becoming a superintendent you had to take other steps. And that tells me that you went straight to become a superintendent or from one or two places. So if what would be one or two pieces of advice that you will give to someone who was in your same shoes? Let's say, I'm assuming you were a principal and you jumped into a super. What are one or two lessons that you will tell that person that they should keep in mind? Because of course they're going to face, let's just pass that, people are going to say, no, you need to do A and B and C and D and F, right? Um, what are those one or two lessons?
Well, I mean, I had people flat out ask me about my age in an interview because the assumption was I was too young to become a superintendent, and that's not the case. I also was 9 months pregnant when I began the superintendency, and so you can have a baby at home and do the work, and all of those things are possible. I think one of the things that I would encourage people to do, and I said this before, but no one's going to define your path. So some of the things that you should be doing if you are a principal looking to move to the superintendency, which we see that happen, we absolutely see that happen. You should network. It's always about relationships and leadership, and those things matter. And how are you getting district office experience? I had a superintendent that let me sit in on negotiations. I had a superintendent that let me be a part of district opportunities that were happening. But I went to her and asked for those things. So you have to advocate for yourself, and you need to be able to promote yourself and have confidence, not cockiness, but you should have confidence and understand that the principalship is very different than the superintendency. It is. But we have had people take non-traditional paths into the superintendency, moving from a chief school business official right into the superintendency. We've had psychologists into the superintendency. Marissa Darlington, who I absolutely love, is a superintendent. She was a kindergarten teacher who became a superintendent. That was her shift. Yes. And she's exceptional at the work. So I don't think that we should let people define us. And I think just building never burn a bridge. Never burn a bridge. So if you're going to leave a district, you're going to go somewhere else, everything should be about humanity and relationships in all of our work. And what leadership opportunities are you going out and getting? I love Daniel Booth in Carbondale. Daniel has always talked about, I come to work every day for the job that I want, not the job that I have, whether it be how I dress, the things I behave. Oh yeah. He's so inspirational and just gets people charged up, but he talks about his path. And every day he showed up thinking, I'm coming to work as what I want, not what I am. And it's served him very, very well.
Wow. Thank you, Courtney. That was amazing. Okay. I don't know. I'm trying to wow. Okay. I would love to be your student. Tell me, my district, I just learned the other day that they give you some for tuition, and I'm a geek. I want to learn. So yeah. I'm going to call you to see if I can enroll, just, to keep learning from you.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is, it's not a conflict of interest. No, that would not happen. Okay. So the next question. So being successful, as you know, includes being on top of your productivity. But productivity can mean for you and me so many different things, and for our sisters and brothers. How will you describe how do you get things done?
Well, this is a good question too, because sometimes I feel like I don't get anything done. And then there are days that by noon, I'll think to myself, I've killed it today. I have done so many things. I've been so ultra productive. But I think that this is dependent on the job that you have, the things that are happening in that job at that time, and also what's happening in your personal life. We all have different phases, and how we make all of that work together. I've learned along the way that sometimes we just have to show up. I've also learned that I can prioritize better. So I really feel like it's dependent on what's happening to you in your life and what the work looks like in that moment. There's probably an ebb and flow for each of us. in the job that we do, and we can define what that looks like. But I'm in a new role and I haven't mastered that at all quite yet.
Okay. Okay. No, I get that. I imagine the email flow is quite different from the flow you used to get as a superintendent. Is there? Do you have any systematic way of doing your email and calendar?
I live and die by my email and my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it's not happening. I mean, I put everything in my calendar, including if my daughter has a haircut on Saturday morning, it's going in my calendar because I have to look at one place for all of that information. For my email, I keep everything in folders. And if it's in my inbox, it means it has something still left to do.
Okay.
And I'll circle back and cycle back to that. Otherwise, once I'm done, I immediately move it over to the folder. So I use my inbox as these are my things that I must be focused on and I must do. I do check email daily because if I don't, it will keep me awake at night. So I make sure that because I teach all day, so I can't check it, or I'm on the road. Sometimes I'll be driving 4 or 5 hours and I can't see anymore. So I can't, and we shouldn't be, on our phone and driving. But when I get to my hotel, one of the very first things that I will do is jump on and see where I'm at, go through it. And then first thing in the morning, that's another routine. Everybody has their own way of doing that, but we all do need a system, because if we've got 45,000 emails sitting in our inbox, we're probably feeling a little overwhelmed.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
don't let that happen to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have, in addition to that, to-do list, or is your inbox your to-do list?
Well, that's a good question. Sometimes I'll just write out Post-it notes, or I'll have a legal pad and I'll write stuff down and then I cross it off because it just personally makes me feel better, like I've accomplished something. But I usually try to do that for more things that I need to do around my house. I need to do this. I've got to do this. I have to do this for Elle or this for Nolan. I'll do that more handwritten. Everything else I only do in my calendar and my email, and I keep everything in one place for my own sanity, because otherwise I'd be all over the place.
We lose it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So usually I ask the interviewee about when they write messages to in your case, the people you provide professional learning, or like, how do you just sit down and start writing? Do you write little bullets on ideas that you want to make sure you go? Like, what is your style of when you're writing to your audience?
I try to be really concise, bold, and underline the things that we know we want people to look at. I remember being a superintendent and having 7 board members. All 7 wanted a different type and style of communication. Some wanted everything. Some wanted the executive summary. Some wanted just things to be highlighted. So I think the audience matters. So in that context, I would do the executive summary at the top for the board member that wanted that. I would still give all of the information for all 7. That way it was always there. And then I would go through and I would highlight and bullet the things that, if you're just going to skim it because you have very limited time, these are the most important things in this that you'll want to read, but you still always have that opportunity. So I try to figure out who the audience is going to be and what is the immediate thing that they need for them in whatever communication that I put out there. Audience matters.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I like that you bold and underline stuff. That's a great piece of advice too. That's the productivity part of our show. So you talked when you were doing your doctorate at U of I, the book Courageous Leadership. Is there a piece of advice you can share to those that are either starting a doctoral program or are in the trenches, of 1 or 2 lessons that you learned that you would like others to know?
I would say get out there and do it. When I got my doctorate, it took 5 years, and that was the minimum amount of time, because it was 3 years of coursework, 2 years of writing. Now we have programs that you can combine that. There are hybrid options that you can be at home with your kids or your family and do that back and forth. So my best advice is get out there and do it, make it happen. There's too many people that look back and say, oh, I wish I would have done that. And Adam Welcome was just saying last week, we have time for the things that we make time for.
Yes.
So if that's important to you, my advice would be get out there and do it. Research, talk to other people that have recently got their doctorate, ask them what their experience was like, do some research, and then get enrolled and go for it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Courtney, with all your experiences, have you ever considered writing a book?
I have considered writing a book, and we do the things that we make time for, and I've not made time for that. But I was thinking this, since I can't look, since my eyes are so bad and I can't look at my phone when I'm traveling all across the state, here's my latest idea. Tell me what you think. I was thinking I'm going to record myself as if I'm typing in maybe Google Notes as I'm driving. So I get my thoughts out there. Sometimes I'll have a 4-hour, 5-hour drive, depending on where I'm going. And then it will automatically convert into the text. And when I have time, then I can start organizing. And it would be a great use of that time versus listening to country music for 5 hours, which I love to do too.
I think that is an absolutely awesome idea.
Okay.
Like,
I'm gonna do it.
I will add to that cherry on that Sunday. I will add that you make a list of the things you want to talk about and make it simple. So you can go broad in those 3 things that you select for that 4-hour drive. So you can really, because the problem with books is that we have so many stories to tell. And in our mind, they are crystal clear. But to explain it to our audience that you want to capture their interest, for them to say, why would I want to read a story of this guy? That is because we forget to add the details as if someone was not there.
Okay.
But I would love to read a book from you. I mean, I can only imagine the chapters when you were transitioning from principal to superintendent. I mean, what you went through, how people look at you and treated you, and lessons learned. Oh my gosh, that's a whole course in the university.
Yeah. I do think it would be a great opportunity. I just haven't put it out there yet, but I'm inspired by what you just said.
Oh yeah, and for my dissertation, when I interview people, I learned that there are apps that transcribe the interview, and it's like almost perfect. You just while you edit it, you go enriching it, right? And it's so beneficial. You don't have to struggle with because the writing process it can be like take so much of your bandwidth. You have a life to live.
Right.
And miles to drive. So yeah, audio record it and then transcribe it. Oh my gosh, you will have a bestseller for sure. I will write something in the back.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so let's talk about that brand new podcast that you have with a friend that I met the other day in the Illinois Principal Association, distinguished principal as well. Tell us about your podcast. What is your show about?
Oh, I'm so excited about this. I don't know how she wrote me in, but my colleague when I was in Lamont is Kate Coach, and she's principal at Oakwood School, and she's been on me, harassing me for 2 years. Courtney, we should start a podcast. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And she is just a dynamo, energetic, and constantly like, we can do this. I'm telling you, we can do it. And so I was on Adam Welcome's podcast. He and I were talking about it, and he said, do it. And I contacted her. I said, I don't know what we're getting ourselves into, but let's do it. So the title of our podcast is Unsupervised Leadership. And the message behind it is, how does unsupervised leadership look in schools? And so instead of stifling our ideas, how do we open up? And we talk about everything. We always start with our favorite drink of the week.
Good.
And I'm not even, I'm here, look, I'm drinking LaCroix tonight. I'm not even drinking the Blue Moon on this, but I've just really been inspired by not only her, but people that are willing to come out there. So the title is Unsupervised Leadership, but it's at F4 Leaders on Twitter. And F4 stands for fun, fabulous, fierce females. Here's what's super cool. This podcast, we've hosted men already. We have men who listen to it. And the idea is about leadership. Yeah. That's what it's about. It is about leadership in schools, in our work. We talk about personal things. We also talk about professional things. And people have actually been writing in, giving us either questions or stories, and then we'll talk about them. And then the second part, we interview someone on the podcast and try to ask them some things that would be unsupervised that they wouldn't necessarily talk about. We had Brent Clark on there. And
what was the most interesting question you asked?
Well, I mean, even his favorite drink, he was talking about, he got into this thing about chocolate milk. We're like, chocolate milk. And so he told us about that. He told us about his career path. Because if you look at Brent Clark, the executive director of IASA, we asked him, like, what challenge, have you ever faced any challenges? Because people probably just assume that Brent Clark doesn't have any challenges professionally. And he was really open about it. So we've had him and Sandy Brown and Adam Welcome. We have an assistant principal next week. We've got some great people in the queue that are coming up. And it's been really fun. We had our best friends. We're going to have our moms on there too. We're having a good time with it. Here's what I can tell you. Some people do certain things in their life, like reading for entertainment, or they go golfing, or they go and travel. This has become the third shift job for me and for Kate. And we're doing this podcast because we just like talking to each other about random stuff. We love having a good drink, and we're just having fun with it. So we've been really pleased so far. People have been very kind to us. So thank you. Thank you. And I looked at yours and I'm like, wait a second, look at you with this commercial. You're big time. So we're going to learn from you as well. But it's just been a really great learning experience and a massive learning curve.
Yes.
A massive learning curve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the best advice I was giving is don't wait for people to tell you that they are listening to you. Just speak. Yeah. Just speak. Yes. And forget about the rest. Speak. Thank you. And anything, if someone is going to start today and they ask you, hey, Courtney, I want to start a podcast, what have you learned? What is the first advice or two that come to mind?
You will hate listening to yourself. You're going to realize all of the things that drive you crazy about your own voice and your mannerisms and intonation. It'll just drive you nuts. But I agree with what you just said. You just need to get out there, and you don't know the influence that you have on people. I've been very touched and almost overwhelmed by people writing in, hearing some of our stories that we're sharing with each other and the impact that it's had for them or some type of inspiration. We just really sell ourselves short about the opportunities that exist of the impact that we can make. And that's been really special so far as we get into it. So I'd say jump right in. I agree with you. Just get in there and go. We've said all along, we don't even care if we have one listener, because this is a good time for us and we learn from each other. And I think that much like your podcast, that it's catching on, and I'm hoping that people can learn and grow from it.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Like at the end of the rope, we're going to be appreciative that we did what we wanted, instead of saying, you know what, I always wanted to do that, but everybody told me not to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right.
Like we think that in life, there's someone waiting at the end of the race. You did it. Nobody's waiting. So it's what you do, right? Like, so
You're
forget
right.
about the naysayers. I love it. So let's talk about your habits of success. Any morning routines or any routine that you will say, because I mean, with your traveling and you are here today and tomorrow, you must have something that works, even if you might think is the worst system. Any advice to share?
Planning ahead has really helped me, especially for people who travel a lot. I pack very well now. I used to pack stuff, when you didn't travel a lot, when you would go somewhere, oh, I need all of this for this short amount of time. No, 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 not anymore. Not for Courtney Orzel. So I really try to be efficient. I make the most of my time in the morning with my kids, doing a checklist of what are you wearing? What does that look like?
Yeah.
The normal things there. So I try to make that part of my routine, checking in with them in the morning. Traveling is really hard when you have little kids. And so trying to just keep routines and schedules for them has posed a challenge, but I think we have somewhat of a better routine as we continue to work towards it. But I think planning ahead and talking ahead about what does that look like, and whatever job that you have, I think just putting some 10 minutes, what do I need to do tomorrow so that I'm not stressed out before my day even begins?
Cool. Do you have any exercise or mindful activities you do?
Yeah, I love that you're asking this. So I have a Peloton. We've talked about this on the podcast. I'm randomly getting on it, and I'm not good at that. And I need to be way, way better. And we also have been joking around. I do Ideal Protein, and it's a very restrictive diet. You're not supposed to drink. So I hate that part of it, if we might be totally honest. It's very, very restrictive about what you can eat and what you can't. But I have struggled with my weight for 46 years now. And it is a big, big challenge for me. It always has been. I talk about that quite openly because I think a lot of people struggle with their weight.
Absolutely.
And I know what I should be doing, but I'm a stress eater. And if I see a snack size bag of Doritos, I'm wondering where the family size bag is because I could go through all of it. So, I mean, if we were just going to put it out there, let's do that. I'm not the model of what that looks like, but I'll tell you who is. Bhavna Sharma Lewis. She's probably the absolute best in a routine and exercise and mindfulness. Sonia Whitaker is the best from the mind perspective as well. She speaks about it all the time. She just started a podcast too. You should have her on here. But I know that I can be better about all those things, but sometimes I think maybe today I'm just going to try to do one little thing better because I didn't wake up and lose 20 pounds overnight. What's going on? I have a lot of work to do, and traveling makes it very challenging too to be on the road. It makes it really, really, really hard. And I'll go places and there's like the best food that you've ever seen. And I don't say no to that. I don't.
Life is too short.
Yeah, life's too short.
Okay. This has been such a great conversation, Courtney. Anything else you would like the listeners of the show to know about you?
I would just say that at the association, we have the ISA Superwomen Initiative, and I want everyone to know that doesn't mean that we're man haters. In fact, I would say that our initiative is about supporting and encouraging all leaders, but specifically predominantly of teachers are female. And this initiative is to create a space that we can elevate and celebrate all leaders, and men are critical to the success. You as a building principal are surrounded by awesome female teachers. And the research would say that if you walked up to them and said, hey, Courtney, have you ever thought about getting your doctorate? You would be awesome at this next step, that within 2 weeks, I've already enrolled in a program. I've researched and I've enrolled because I can't stop thinking that you think that about me. And so the ISA Superwomen Initiative is not about men versus women. It is about elevating and celebrating all leaders. And I just want everybody to know that, because everyone is welcome to participate in that and helping elevate females in our role.
Thank you so much for saying that. I had the opportunity, as you know, to see you and the other superintendent, Sharma.
Bhavna Sharma Lewis.
Sharma Lewis, and I went out of curiosity. It's like, what is this all about? And it was quite illuminating, and I encourage all my male peers to actively engage and participate, because together we are better.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any last thoughts before we leave this show?
No, I just think I love the work that you're doing. Before we got on here, I said to you, I love that you're so positive and that your mantra is about how do we uplift our profession. I am convinced that public education, education in general, is the most profound and amazing profession.
Yes.
I'm proud to be an educator and that we must stay positive, assume good intent, don't get focused on negative, don't get wrapped up in that and the gossip that can happen, and that we continue to keep our focus on kids and what's good for them, on our staff and how do we support them. And I just love the platform that you have out here. So I'm just really grateful for my own kids' educators, for educators across Illinois. A quick shout out to a teacher that I think is awesome.
Yes.
Okay. Susan Jahimyak, I think is what it is, in Joliet. She's a teacher who, I'm not kidding, is honestly, she's got thousands of followers. She's probably one of the most positive people on the planet. I'm going to give a shout out to PJ Capozzi for being a great human.
Awesome.
Yeah. And he checked in on me today at a time that I looked at my phone. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but this was perfect timing for him to reach out to me. Shout out to Lori Frank Hopkins, who, if you're not following her on Twitter, you need to, because she sends out daily positivity like nobody else. And same with Lance Landeck, who is a superintendent and also just a big promoter of positivity. We just have so many wonderful people in education to follow, including you, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Oh, it was a pleasure. You heard from the one and only Courtney Orzel. I hope that you have a great evening.
Oh, hey, you too.
Thank you so much. And now you're going to see my doggy saying the bye-bye. But then let's stay 2 minutes so I can celebrate you off the camera.
Okay.
Good night. Peace and calm.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efraín Martinez.
Chulu.
And LF.production. Chill out.